أول شيء I'm Hassan Turmus كان بيحكي أحمد عباس. I this session, it's the first session in our fundamentals track. It's meant as an introduction, فأنا ما حتكون كثير technical, hopefully. Yeah. أول شيء I'm going to introduce who AI Journey are. We're a student-led community. We're basically a bunch of students that decided, شفنا فراغ basically إنه there's a lack of focus on AI and machine learning at AUB. We decided to fill that gap. We've been going for 2 years now.
Yes.
1.5 to 2 years, and we basically run sessions. We get engineers from top companies. We got professors to give talks. We try to organize sessions like implementation sessions or hands-on sessions. And our main goal is to demystify AI and make it accessible to everyone. So, مثل ما Ahmed mentioned, we don't care what your major is, we don't care what your technical background is, we want to make AI accessible to you. And so this year, the way we've divided our sessions this year is going to be mainly 3 tracks. So there's the fundamentals track, which is this. There's the advanced track, which introduces more advanced machine learning concepts. And there's the tools track. The tools track is basically going to be a series of sessions where we explore what machine learning tools are out there and how we can use machine learning, be it in development or in our day-to-day problems. So the tools track, even if you're watching the fundamentals track, you can attend the sessions of the tools track. So they're not exclusive. Okay? And there's no background needed for the tools track. For the advanced track, I think there may be some background needed, but still it's worth giving it a shot to attend these sessions. Okay, so first of all, these sessions, who are they for? Are we all technical here? Does anyone come from a non-technical major? What major is it? Applied math.
Physics.
Physics.
Business.
Okay. So these sessions are for everyone. So again, no matter what your major is or your background is, the point is to make AI accessible to everyone. Okay. So first of all, we're gonna come back to why AI is important to learn today. I'm gonna expand on what Ahmed was talking about. But first of all, let's try to define AI. Now, the problem with AI is that there's no solid definition that's universally agreed upon. So there's no one definition of AI, but basically, like a hand-wavy definition is, AI is about building systems that perform tasks that require human intelligence, or that require replicating human intelligence, such as perception. So you see these AI models that recognize faces. So this is a human skill that we call perception, being able to perceive a face and knowing who it belongs to. There's reasoning, which we've heard about recently in ChatGPT. So when we see ChatGPT is thinking, that's reasoning. There's learning, which is basically the umbrella term used here. And usually, when we talk about AI these days, we're talking about machine learning, and these terms are confused frequently. So back to why you need to learn AI after we've tried to define it. So first of all, it's an important and growing field. Everyone's heard about AI. Everyone can appreciate how powerful AI is, and it seems like this magical tool. The world is changing, so I like to compare the boom of AI to kind of like the start of the boom of computers. So when computers started off, they were specialized to some people, but then at some point, everyone knows how to use a computer. And I'm not saying that everyone should know how to use AI or how to build a model, but it's a skill that's worth looking into. It's also important to future-proof yourself. We always hear about AI coming for our jobs, and like everyone can be replaced by AI these days. We hear these terms, and it's important to future-proof yourself. It's important to be part of that environment. And also for opportunities and internships, and this is very important, especially for second year or third year students. Are there any second year or third year students here? Yeah, so specifically for those, like for CSE second year students or third year students or CCE and any technical major, it's important to build your CV, build your portfolio, and tailor it towards what you're trying to get into. So if you're interested in going into AI, it's important that you that you build your resume up in that direction. Okay.
One more thing, like you might think that if you come from non-STEM major, then this is not for you. Well, you kind of have a privilege because of your non-STEM major. Because, okay, let's say someone who is majoring in biology, someone who knows much about biology and knows some AI will know exactly how he can apply AI in his major. It's like that we have a hammer, which is AI, but we don't have any nails to push the hammers on. But when you're a biology student, you see a lot of nails, you see a lot of application that AI could be there, and because you know how stuff work in your major, you know how things go, you know how to exactly apply what you have learned in artificial intelligence to build tools that serves this application. So don't think if you come from non-STEM major, مش non-STEM, as in non-computer science, مش engineer, مش computer scientist ولا math or physics. If you come even from biology, business, whatever, you know in your field what are the problems and what are problems that cannot be deterministically, polynomially solved. In some kind of sense, and I don't want to go into details in this, but you know there is a problem, and if I need to solve it, I need a lot of humans, but maybe not a lot of humans, maybe something that is smart enough to solve it, something that can act like a human, just like Hassan said. It's someone who can replicate human intelligence. So you shouldn't be down because some people like computer science, so they might get more courses or more classes. The resources out there are هلا الانترنت overplayed بالريسيرش تبع الاي اي. You can learn it everywhere. في ستانفورد courses, في YouTube is full يعني you can learn AI whatever your major is. You don't need يعني مش هقول you don't need the course. It's good to get the course. It's good to take courses بالAUB أكيد and do the projects. بس إنه pretty much you can learn everything online هلا حاليا يعني. This does not apply بس على AI. It applies to many things يعني. This is just to encourage you إنه don't drop this off because you feel you don't fit in, but you fit in because you think you don't. لأنه you think you don't, you know how to apply the things that you have that seems so non-mathematically كتير مش engineering stuff على your field. تمام؟
حتى one extra point about this, and I'm taking the machine learning course, and as part of our final project, if we do something in the medical field or in whatever field, we're supposed to get the professor proof that it works from someone in that field. So at the end of the day, whatever machine learning project you're building, it's important that the people in that field understand how it works. And so if you're from that field, that gives you an edge. So moving on, our plan for these sessions is going to be a mix of theoretical sessions and hands-on labs. So we're going to try to focus on getting your hands dirty and actually working with the stuff we're going to be covering. We're going to try to implement the concepts we explained, so algorithms like gradient descent or models like linear regression, we're going to try to implement them. And of course, the aim behind this is to build a community. So at the end of the day, we try to offer mentorship and peer support. And this is the sequence of topics. It's not necessarily one topic per session, but this is the general outline we're going to follow. We're going to start with an introduction, which is today. We're going to move on to regression, feature engineering, classification. Then we're going to practically try to implement these things, and then we're going to move on to other topics. And now back to, I mentioned that there's this confusion between artificial intelligence and machine learning. So let's try to break this down. So there's this big umbrella term, which is artificial intelligence. This blue circle, and it can be divided into different fields. So a subset of artificial intelligence is machine learning. And this is something that people confuse a lot. They think that artificial intelligence is equivalent to machine learning. When in reality, there's a lot of artificial intelligence that happens outside the scope of machine learning. And so again, what's machine learning? Machine learning is the subset of artificial intelligence that focuses on how machines learn. So in general, to replicate human intelligence, you don't need to replicate learning specifically. For example, let's say there is an artificial intelligence model that plays XO. So this model replicates human decision making, but it doesn't necessarily have to learn. When we're talking about machine learning, we're talking specifically about the aspect of AI or the models in AI that learn. So we get a lot of data, we feed into the model, and it learns. And we're going to talk about the details of that later. And within machine learning, forget about the yellow stuff for now. Within machine learning, it can be broadly divided into 3 categories. And again, this is a developing field, so the borders are starting to fade away, kind of. Like, things are starting to mix. But in general, we can divide it into 3 parts. There's supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning, which we're going to talk about in a bit. But basically, supervised learning, I'm going to start with supervised learning. Or actually, first, this is a different diagram that illustrates the same idea. So now we're focusing on machine learning. We're not going to really focus on non-machine learning AI things. So machine learning, 3 categories. And now we're going to go into how even supervised learning is then further divided. But first of all, let's talk about what supervised learning is. Supervised learning is basically when you give a model a lot of test data that is labeled. So let's explain this through an analogy. Let's say you have an exam and you start to solve previous exams, practicing for that exam. So you have the question, but you also have the answer. You try to solve the question, then you compare what you have with the answer. If you got the right answer, great. If you didn't, you start to try to learn from the difference between your answer versus the actual answer. So the difference between these 2 things helps you learn and improve your process of getting to an answer. So there's this process of like solving the problem. And when you compare your answer to the expected answer, you basically fine-tune or improve or train this process that you use to get to the answer. Does this resonate with everyone? Does that make sense? Okay. So this is basically what supervised machine learning is. You have a bunch of questions and their corresponding answers. You give it to the model, and the model tries to answer the questions, then compares its answer to the actual answer, and learns from that difference. Okay? And examples of this is email spam detection. So I could get, okay, so first of all, let's define the problem. If I have an email and I want to classify it as either it's a spam email or it's a valid email. And this is something our email systems do every day. So I could get a bunch of emails with their labels, which is the label is basically either spam or not spam. So I get a bunch of emails and the label, one email and the label, another email and the label, etc. So I feed all of this, I give it to my model, and somehow, we're going to go into this later, but somehow the model learns from all of these examples. It learns, if I give it a new email, it learns how to classify it. There are other examples, I'm not going to go into details here, but this is the first part of, or the first, let's say, broad category of machine learning, supervised learning. Does anyone have a question on this? Okay. The other category we're going to talk about is unsupervised learning. In unsupervised learning, you don't have questions and answers. You basically have data, and you're trying to find relations, or like a relationship between points in these data. So for example, let's say I have data on a bunch of people, and I'm trying to categorize them into different labels. So for example, if I own a certain company, I have data on my customers, and I want to know what customers I should, what customers are interested in a specific type of product. So I would cluster these customers into different groups. Like the problem here is a bit vaguer, because we're not really trying to predict something specific. We don't know what we're looking for, but we're looking for something. So I have these data points, and I'm trying to find associations between them. An example of this would be clustering. Another example is anomaly detection. So if I have, let's say I have the record of the performance of my car over the last 2 years, and I want to know if it's performing normally today. I get all of this data. There's nothing specific I'm looking for, but I want to see if today's performance is consistent with the performance over the years, or is it an anomaly? Hopefully I spelled that correctly. Anyway. No, actually. Okay, anyways. So, yeah, so what I'm trying to say here is I don't have questions and answers that I'm trying to learn. I have data points and I'm trying to find relationships between them. Okay? The third part or the third category of machine learning is reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning is I have this agent that I'm trying to train, and at first I'm gonna let it do whatever it wants. And for every decision it does, I either reward it or I penalize it. And the agent's goal is to maximize its reward. That's what it wants. So that's what it understands. I just want to maximize my reward. But I'm giving it reward based on good decisions. So technically, by trying to maximize its reward, it's learning to make good decisions. Does that make sense? Okay. أحمد عباس put it this way. تنزل فيه خبيط ليتعلم. You penalize it until it learns to not do the things that make it get the penalty. So again, this is a broad look of how machine learning looks. There's supervised, unsupervised reinforcement. Does anyone have any questions on these? Okay. Now we're gonna the first thing we're gonna go into is supervised learning. Supervised learning is divided into it's further divided into things, into fields. Today we're gonna focus on one of these fields, which is regression. Specifically, we're gonna take a high-level view on an algorithm named linear regression, or a type of model named linear regression. And I'm not gonna go into the technical details today. Next session we're gonna go into more details. But I just wanna give you a sense of what a machine learning model might actually look like. And just a disclaimer, this is a very simple model. So today's model, they might be built on the same concepts or the same principles, but this is a very simple and not very powerful model. We're going to use it just as an introduction. So the problem is as follows. I have this data which tells me, it compares the number of tourists in thousands to the average hotel price in a certain area. So if I get 2,500, which is basically 2.5 million tourists, then the price of hotels per area would be like around this point. So it's like $77. So I know, for example, for this point, I know it's 1125, something like that. And then I know that the price is, let's say, 87. So I have a bunch of these data, which are basically pairs of how many tourists I got versus what's the average price of a hotel. Does this make sense to everyone? And I did this for, let's say, multiple years or multiple months, whatever. I got multiple data points, and now what I'm trying to do is build a model which next year is going to predict what the average hotel price is going to be based on the number of tourists. Okay? So next year I'm going to get, let's say, this number of tourists, which is 17.5 million. If I look at my data, there's no point that corresponds to 17.5 million. So I can't say that, okay, 2 years ago I got 17.5 million tourists, so the hotel price should be comparable. There's no data point that corresponds to that number of tourists, but my model should somehow learn from this and be able to predict what the average price of a hotel should be. Does everyone understand what the problem is? Okay. Does anyone have any suggestions on how to solve this? Okay. So I'm going to try to find the line of best fit. And then that would basically be my model. So for those of you who don't know what a line of best fit is, it's basically a line that best represents the trend in my data. So I can tell that in this case, the line of best fit looks something like this. It's increasing, and it's somewhere around here, right? This line does a good This line does a good job of representing my data. And what I'm gonna do now is, let's say I get I want to find the answer for this number of tourists, what would I do?
The intersection.
Exactly, I would just use the line, and then this would be my prediction. So this line will enable me to make a prediction or a guess on what the average price of a hotel is for whatever number of tourists. And now I don't have to rely on these data points, I just don't need them. I just need the line, right? Okay. But the problem here is, how do I actually get that line? And that's the problem that linear regression solves. And the answer is, in a 2D case,
Minimize the average distance between the line and the points.
exactly, we're gonna go into that next time, but okay, so I'm trying to find the line that best represents my data, and in a 2D case, it turns out that there's a closed form solution for this. You can literally just calculate the slope and the y-intercept. Literally just apply a formula and find the answer. But when things get more complicated and higher dimensions, which we're going to see later, things are not that simple. So we're going to follow an iterative approach. What we're going to do is guess any line, just throw a guess out there, and then evaluate how good that line is versus the points that I have. And this goes back again to the thing I was explaining here, which is guess your answer, and then compare it with how close it is to the actual answers. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna guess this line, then I'm gonna say, okay, for this x, the y value should be this, should be up here, but my actual y value is all the way down here. For example, for this x value, the actual y value is here, my y value is all the way down here, and I'm gonna compare these values. Then based on these values, I'm gonna somehow know in what direction I have to shift this line. And so in the next iteration, it's gonna be closer. I'm gonna figure out that I have to tilt it upwards and move it. And then the next iteration, it's gonna be even closer.
Is it more efficient, because we are assuming linearity, is it better to start with the first point and the last point and then keep going?
You mean like for the initial guess?
Yes.
It could be more efficient. You could go into how can I,
Because we are assuming
what initial
it's
guess
a
would.
linear thing, so we can start with literally.
But what if your data looks something like this? And then the last point is this. It's an outline.
But that's
like
still
that-
better
then-
than the
then
blind
if you do
volume
this-
on the bottom.
But like I could give you a much more extreme case. Like what if the first point was down here, and then your line is like
The next iteration is going to be better than, let's say, having a line such as this one.
not necessarily. Like you could try to find a good initial guess, but it won't matter a lot. Because if your guess is very bad, the algorithm we're gonna cover, if your guess is very bad, it's gonna make big jumps. And then the closer you get to the actual line, the jumps are gonna get smaller and smaller, so you don't skip the correct line. Does that make sense? Okay. And so at the end, we reach this this optimal line, or the line of best fit. And I claim that by some measure, or in some sense, this line is the best approximation of what the average price of a hotel will be given a certain number of tourists. So by some sense, by some measure, this is my best chart. And this is a very simple model. It's just an example of how machine learning can be applied and how you can actually solve a real world problem with this. But who can point out problems with this approach? Like why isn't this applicable always? Why isn't machine learning just this?
Not all problems are.
What if I don't have the real answers or the correct answers?
Okay, first of all, what you were saying, what if my points didn't look linear? What if they looked like this?
Like a parabola.
Yeah, for example, what if it looked like this? Then whatever line I choose, like let's say I choose this line, it's not really a representative, right? And we're gonna cover how to solve this problem later on. And there's something you were mentioning, which is we don't always have the labels, which is when you go into a completely separate field, which is unsupervised learning. Okay. And I want to point something out, which is when we were comparing this line to our data points, can you see how this is basically the same as you solving a question in a previous exam and comparing the answer? Just want to draw this parallel so you get the idea. So these are literally my questions, and this line represents my answers. I'm comparing these, like the actual answer to my question, to my answer, and based on that, I'm making a decision on how to move the line. Can you see the relation here? Okay.
Yes.
This was basically it from me. This is the link to the WhatsApp group if you want to join, where we make announcements there usually. Yeah.
I can do the recap. You can go do your exam.
Yeah.
Hassan has an exam on the slide. He's crazy. Okay, so I want to do just a quick recap of everything and what we're going to do. So Hassan can go do an exam when he's not fail, inshallah. Okay, so today what did we learn? We learned that AI, machine learning, supervised and supervised. At the end of the day, what we are doing, we have a task, right? We have some task, we want to estimate stuff. We have data, we are making use of our data to solve our task. And this is pretty much the case for a lot of stuff. And the AI you are familiar with, which is ChatGPT. What you see عم تحكوا معه English عم بطلع لكم English تمام. This is also a different يعني this is a task تاني كمان. بس هيدا الشيء ما بيمنع انه ChatGPT which talks to you in English ترجموا له English ما يستعمل models مثل regression. Not very far. In 2 weeks I was doing some kind of project and I wanted to estimate, let's say for the set of okay حقولكم على شو كان example. كان عندنا مثلا a beaker chemistry experiment which is chemistry people should be familiar with. عندنا a beaker بقلبه set of materials بقلبه let's say CO3 وبقلبه liquids وبقلبه قصص وحركات. I want to know إذا معي هيدا البيكر وبقلبه هالقصص إذا بحط بعد شيء okay what would be the effect. نحن نعرف chemical reaction إنه في effects release of gas ولا sound ما بعرف شو. طيب جيت عم بتطلع هلا أنا شو كان صار مخي خلص brain rot على ChatGPT وLLMs. إذا في عندي مشكلة بالحياة فيش غير هون ChatGPT بيحل لهم صح؟ سو عندي هيدا السوفت وير that I was building عن جد يعني قلت يلا اوكي عندي بيكر ماشي اتس سو ايزي جاي اليوزر عنده بيكر حاطط بقلبه سم سوليدز هلا انا اي نو انا عارف كيف حط له باي ترتيب معي هيدا از داتا انه اتس سيشن يعني التلفزيون عم يعمل قصص معه كل هول داتا يعني معي انه اول شيء حط هيك طلع له هيك حط هيك طلع له هيك سو معي كل السيكونس اوف صف هيدد وهلا بدي اشوف اذا هو مثلا حط بعد شغله وات وود هابن. انا شو برين روت خلص بعقلي شو بدي اعمل فيش غير شو احكي مع تشات جي بي تي انه انا بماي سوفت وير شو بعمل بروح بقول هي تشات جي بي تي يو ار هيلبفل اسيستنت معك السيت اب تاعت الكيمستري اكسبيرمنت ذات ايم دوينج انت بتعرف انه التلميذ عمل 1 2 3 بليز قل لي بيز على اخر اكشن شو هي الرياكشن. عم بتطلع هيك قلت انه this can be solved somehow by regression. انه بالنهايه اذا بنطلع على الستاف اللي جوا البيكر instead of letting an LLM يطلع شويه سيت اب كل هالاخبار كلها ويعمل predictions I can maybe find a relation عن جد لتر انه a relation. نحن يعني هلا الاستاذ الكيمياء شو بيعمل يعني حيجي يحط هالبيكر حيعرف اذا عندي 500 ملي اوف CaSO3 وزدت عليهم 249 ملي اوف ما بعرف شو في شيء ليكويد كربون شيء ليكويد H3O+ اسيد بعرف انه لازم يكونوا 250 على قد تصير في رياكشن. تمام هيك الاستاذ رح يعمل انه بيعرف انه في ريليشن بين الاثنين. طيب ما فيني مره الموديل للفيتشرز بيكونوا مثل هيدا الريجريشن كمان سمبل شو كان y equal شو كان ax plus b والاكسس شو كان نمبر اوف تورستس والواي كان البرايس مزبوط. طب ما فيني مره انا موديل للبيكر اللي الي للرياكشن اللي الي ان y equal ل w1 مثلا ويت 1 ضرب قديش في عندي CaSO3 زائد W2 زائد قديش عندي هون فيني مره هيك موديل صح؟ I can do this انه there is plenty of data في كثير عالم بالحياه في كثير عالم بالحياه عاملين experiments بالكيمستري قبل ففي عندي data of بس زيد هيدي شو بصير فتكنيكلي we don't have to use هول يعني هلا what's trending is LLMs وتشات جي بي تي والاخبار بس it's not always the best انه you could use stuff غير هيك you could use the simple which is like regression it turns out in regression it's going to حيكون performance احسن من LLM من تشات جي بي تي. لا لما تشات جي بي تي مره على الجنرال بيربس ستاف يعني نفس التشات جي بي تي اللي بتقول له يعمل لك موضوع عربي يعمل لك موضوع انجليزي بيحل لك فرض مات مزبوط. بس اللي هي ريجريشن موديل مره لهيدي التاسك معين هيدي السبيسيفيك تاسك حيعملها. ف it's not always the case of using LLMs which is هلا trending على الأقل. Sometimes it goes back to using regression. حتى it's not always the case to use AI. We don't have to use AI بكل شيء بالحياه. في ستاف ذات ار بيتر اوف without اي اي. هلا الشركات هلا اذا بتروح على اي حدا عم انترنشيب ستاف في اوكي في منهم اللي بدهم اكسبيرينس اي اي ستاف وتلاقي في شركات بدهم حدا اكسبرت اي اي. تمام؟ وحده من هالشركات هي ميراكس، بتعرفوها ميراكس. اوكي قالوا بدنا اي اي انجينيرز اند ذن ليش بدنا اي اي انجينيرز؟ ما نحن اور سوليوشن از بيورلي سوفت وير. السوليوشن ستاتيك. نحن بنعرف انه الاي اي على شيء، الاي اي شو بيعمل؟ It does not predict the answer مثل ما هو. It approximates. مظبوط؟ طب اذا انا عندي شيء بلا اي اي عم بطلع لي السوليوشن على قد فشو بستعمل اي اي؟ مظبوط؟ بس نحن we still need to build some intuition انه when to use and when not to use AI. تمام؟ When to do a solution which is purely software and when to use a solution AI. When to use linear regression باشياء كثير صعب مثل هيدي البيجر اكسام اللي بتعرف عنها and when to use LLMs. ف in order to know exactly what to use you can't really jump up into stuff يعني مثل LLM stuff لا maybe simple stuff would serve better. فان شاء الله هلا we are starting with supervised learning very simple models جيب خط وحط لي اياه على الداتا وقول لي هذا احسن شيء بالحياه to some more complex models anomaly detection مثلا supervised learning او clustering stuff and then حنروح على reinforcement learning جيب الموديل وخبيط لحتى اخر شيء to maximize the reward and then بس تخلص هول supervised والunsupervised والخبار كده to get some intuition then we're going to do بعدين tokenization embedding صرنا نحكي LLMs transformers ايش اللي هلا ترندي and I think by يعني if you keep up with the pace we have in mind حاليا I think we'll maybe by the end of the semester حنبلش stuff that maybe بياخدوها باخر كورس الماشين ليرنينج عندنا بالجامعه. فنحن ان شاء الله انه we will try to نعطيكم السيشنز بطريقه معقوله انه بدنا نخلص اشياء منيحه على القد we don't have to go up to specific لكثير اشياء لانه في كثير اشياء that relate to each other يعني انه كان مثلا clustering organism مثل شيء معين مثل شيء معين ثاني كمان فمين بنتعلم بس واحد and then الثاني it will be very easy to learn. و you don't only have to count only on us بالنهايه نحن مش جايين نحن مش بنحتكر الاي اي لا فيش هيك يعني بالعكس انه نتعلم مع بعض and then maybe you can go search online انه اوكي واتس supervised تروح تتعلم شوي لحالكم تشوف الاخبار كلياتها لانه هلا it's very important for اي حدا بحياته يكون بيعرف الاي اي انه في له ابلكيشنز كثير بالحياه وخلص هيدا يعني هلا الترند اللي فات يلا هات نلحق الجماعه نطلع معهم مصاري بس نطلع مصاري فهي الخبريه فان شاء الله بنضل نحن هلا نحن هي بلشت قصه كبيره يعني ان شاء الله نضل كوميونتي وحده هيك دائما نتعلم اياه مع بعض نتناقش اياه مع بعض وان شاء الله نصير اكسبرتس كمان مع بعض. ف I think that's all for the introductory session. نشوفكم سيشنز ثانيه. وعملوا جوين كمان هلا نحن 400 بس بدنا نوضح بصير 450 ف it will be better يعني. لا بمزح انه عملوا جوين لنطلع عشان فور اني ابديتس.
460 هلا.
يلا كويشن حدا عنده كويشن تفضل.
ليش نحن بالفاندمنتالز نحن التولز
ايه فاندمنتالز فيك تحضر التولز هلا انا I would advise you انه يمكن اوكي فيك تحضر شوي ادفانسد ليك كمان to build some to have some فكره انه شو عم بيصير بالحياه بس انه fundamentals tools are good for you it's a good combination انه fundamentals is the knowledge foundation that you need the tools هو what you can use
واكيد انسبيرنج كم
ها ايه اكيد معلم خلص ما عادش
advanced
the advanced is a fundamentals is let's say 5 out of 10 of ها فيك تقول advanced شيء 8 يعني بس انه هي the name is intimidating بصراحه انه advanced بس انه technically اذا بتعرف لا you need شوي اوكي you need شوي neural networks back propagation وهيك كم شغله and then you can
خلص focus on fundamentals
tools مش وما تفكروا حالكم behind انه عن جد you can دغري تفوتوا يعني نحن we learned AI while giving AI sessions صح شوي يعني انا الصراحه يعني خلص بلا ما نطلع فضايح بس انه sometimes I was giving a session كنت عم بتعلمها قبل بجمعه يعني. بس انه that's هيدا الفلو يعني بالحياه يعني مثلا راجز في شيء اسمه راجز طلع قبل 3 سنين بشهرين العالم ما كانت عارفه يعملوا شيء بشهرين ختموه العالم يعني خلص وصلوا لمحل ما عادش فينا نعمل احسن من هيك فهيدي الحياه يعني فان شاء الله نلحق العالم هو اكيد حنلحق العالم انه تكنيك العالم بعضه واقف يعني وصلوا لكاب معين بالال امز وحاولوا يطلعوا برات هلا حاليا بس انه they are still behind يعني اذا هلا بتشوف مثلا اوبن اي نصر بيبر اون hallucinations stuff وطلع واحد ليون شلون نزل كمان hallucinations يصورهم كثير على لينكد ان مثلا يعني هلا بطلوا عم يفكروا كيف يحسنوا الاركتكتشر اكثر عم يفكروا انه what we have wrong يعني عم يفكروا هلا اوكي الان كثير عم بيهلوس مش عم يفكروا يحلوا شوي الهلوس اكيد رح يفكروا يحلوا الهلوس
بس هو قال انه هي فيتشر
عشوائي قال فيتشر وكمان قالوا انه let's just calculate a day. let's say انه انتم بهالبس يعني صاروا عشوائي they are building مثلا bench marking على what شو الاشي الموجود يعني. فmaybe مش عم بمزح ولا عم بعطيكم encouragement عمياء بس maybe you could be the next one اللي بيور field that comes up with an AI solution that ما بعرف بكسر الدنيا. فان شاء الله خير. صرت عامل اختتامية مرة اثنين ثالث مرة. فان شاء الله خير وان شاء الله ما بعرف شو. that's all for the first session. ان شاء الله نشوف the next session. باي باي.